All right, we got a huge game this weekend. Texas on the road at Michigan. Your defending 15-0 national champion, Michigan Wolverines. Both teams 1-0. Week 1 win for Michigan, week 1 win for Texas. Talk a little bit about those games and look ahead to this weekend's game in Ann Arbor. Congratulations if you're watching this video. You have found Uncle Lou's second channel. I take 1 week a year during the college football season and post all my videos on the second channel. I do a morning show on the second channel 4 mornings a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. It's about 50-50 football, non-football type stuff. And in order to just let people know that channel exists, I usually pick 1 week during the football season and post videos over here on the second channel. I usually try to look for a week maybe that doesn't have any great games or very few. Unfortunately, this season, with conference realignment and teams moving around and expansion and the playoffs going to 12 teams, there really isn't a week that suits that. Like, literally every single week, it seems like, has unbelievably huge matchups in the world of college football with either conference or playoff implications. Even some weekends late in November where maybe it's an interesting game, but because some teams have a couple of losses, they're out of the playoffs. That won't be the case this year because 2 lost teams are going to get in. May even have some 3 lost teams getting in. So I figure why not just take this week here and do it now. For the next several days, I don't know, through the weekend, we'll be posting everything over here, the live shows, the game streams, the call-in shows on Tuesday and Thursday night. So tonight at 9 o'clock on this channel, we'll do the call-in show. The game streams on Saturday will be on this channel. The kickoff show will be on this channel. We'll just do it for a few days. I do this once a year. I know it's not a good idea, but I do it anyway. But let's talk about Texas and Michigan. Now, this game has been talked about since last season ended. It's one of the biggest non-con matchups of the 2024 college football season. You think whatever you want about Texas' team this year or Michigan's team this year, Texas and Michigan are 2 of the biggest brands in all of college football. Today, yesterday, 10 years ago, 50 years ago, these are 2 all-time blue blood great programs in the world of college football, and they're facing off this Saturday in Ann Arbor, a big noon kickoff, early game, and it's going to be a good one. Now, the line started at about 4 points early when the line was announced in the offseason. And even leading up to this weekend's game, you could find the line, Texas was about a 4-point favorite. Well, as I'm sure you're probably aware, Michigan did not look great this past weekend against Fresno State, and they have got some huge red flags and question marks. And as a result of that, this line is shot up to 7 or 7.5 points, depending on where you look. So Texas is now a touchdown favorite on the road in one of the biggest stadiums in the country, the Big House, Ann Arbor, Michigan, against the defending national champion Michigan Wolverines. Let's talk about Michigan's game last week just real briefly because we've been over it a little bit in some other videos. But they did win against Fresno State 30-10. And Fresno State plays a lot of Power 5 opponents every single year. They used to play a lot of Pac-12 teams. So they're not unfamiliar with going up against some of these bigger schools. They're not intimidated, in other words. They don't get off the bus expecting to lose. With that being said, a team like Michigan should have handled them no problem. And the final score, 30-10, it is what it is. Michigan pulled away in the second half, kind of how you expected them to, right? Kind of dominated the lines of scrimmage. Fresno State had an impossible time trying to run the ball against this Michigan defense. But the problems with Michigan or the questions, I guess, that some people had about Michigan heading into the season reared their heads in this game against Fresno State. It was announced leading up to this Michigan-Fresno State game that Warren was going to get the start at QB. A lot of people had assumed it would be Orji. I wasn't that high on Orji going back to when I saw him play last year and even in the spring game this year. I felt like he didn't play the position of quarterback that well. He's an unbelievable athlete. He can run around and do amazing things with his legs. But when it comes to just running the offense, reading defenses, making throws, progressing through the reads, those kinds of things, I felt like he wasn't great. And apparently the coaching staff agreed. They gave Warren the start. And unfortunately, he just didn't have a good day. You look at his numbers, he really struggled. Davis Warren did. He was 15 of 25 for only 118 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Orji did play some. He only had 2 pass attempts. He was 1 for 2 for 3 yards with a touchdown. So combined, they threw for only 121 yards against Fresno State. Now, when it comes to running the ball, they only ran the ball for 148 yards. And while that's not terrible, when you think about Michigan and sort of their strengths and potential questions or weaknesses heading into the season, one thing that I don't think anybody really worried about was their lines of scrimmage. Michigan was going to have a great defense, particularly the defensive line, and you thought maybe the offensive line, same thing. You would expect more than 148 yards rushing, especially considering how hard of a time they had throwing the ball I mean, they had 34 rush attempts. It's not like they only ran the ball 20 times. They had 34 rush attempts, 148 yards. And while Khalil Mullings had a good day, 15 carries, 92 yards, you look down the list of Donovan Edwards, who was supposed to be the premier back coming into this season, sort of a backup role to Blake Corum the last couple of years, 11 carries, 27 yards, about 2.5 yards per carry against a group of 5 team, Fresno State. Again, 34 carries, 148 yards total as a team rushing on the ground for Michigan. No rushing touchdowns. You look over on the other side of the ball for Michigan defensively, and they kind of got lit up through the air. And this is concerning with a Texas team coming in that loves to sling the ball around. But the Fresno State quarterback, Mikey Green, was 22 of 36, 235 yards with a touchdown. Michigan did intercept him twice, but you gave up 235 yards passing to Fresno State. Texas is going to have a much more dangerous passing game than Fresno State. Now, on the ground, Michigan defensively, as you would expect, played really, really well. In fact, they held Fresno State to 9 yards rushing, which is really, really good. But then you look at Texas, right? What was the story of Texas the last couple of weeks heading into the season? Running back injuries. And you're like, uh-oh, might not be able to run the ball, going to have to rely more on the pass. Well, it looks like that might be the way to attack Michigan anyway, based on what we've seen in week 1. Really good against the run, gave up 235 in the air, passing to Fresno State. So you look at what Texas did to Colorado State. Well, they beat them 52-0. They never struggled. They were up 31-0 at halftime. They put Arch Manning in. He played well, too. Quinn Ewers was 20 of 27, 260 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Arch Manning came in 5 of 6, 95 yards with a touchdown. They ran the ball pretty well, too. 41 carries, 190 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground. Jarrett Gibson, who was sort of the next in line after they had a running back, the injury situation with the running backs at Texas, 10 carries for 67 yards. That's almost 7 yards a carry. He also scored a touchdown. Jaden Blue, 11 carries, 57 yards. So Texas did, they did work on the ground. They did work through the air. They're not one-dimensional. They can run, they can throw. So if they get up to Ann Arbor this weekend and the running game's not there, which I expect it to be tough sledding between the tackles, especially for Texas against this Michigan run defense, I look for Texas to open it up through the air here. I picked Texas to win this game in the offseason, and nothing I saw in week 1 would lead me to change my mind here other than having to play in Michigan. It's hard to find a lot of real advantages for Michigan in this game. Brand new coaching staff, new quarterback, a lot of turnover on both the coaching staff and the roster, right? And this is something that I worried about as a Georgia fan a couple of years ago. It's really, really hard to win a national title. Really hard to do. I know we all talk trash on here all the time, and it almost feels sometimes like it devolves into like either you win the Natty or you're terrible. The reality is there's a lot of gray area in between winning a Natty and being terrible, right? It's extremely hard to win a Natty. It's infinitely more hard to win 2 Natties in a row, and one of the reasons for that is, besides the obvious turnover, you're losing players every year. In Michigan's case, maybe you're losing some coaches. When you have players that win a national championship, so much effort and intensity and focus goes into doing that. And I'm not just talking about Saturdays in the fall. I'm talking about a random Tuesday in February when you don't feel like working out, a random Wednesday in the middle of May where you don't feel like maybe doing your drills or whatever the case. It's a 365-day process to stay at the top of your game to the point where a team is able to eventually win a national championship. And when you come off of a national championship, I think it's natural and sort of make a little bit human nature to kind of, you want to sit back, take a breath. Maybe you don't work as hard next year. I'm not saying Michigan, I'm not saying that has happened to Michigan. What I'm saying is that is always a concern about a national title winning team. I guarantee you, if you sit any coach down of a national title winning team and ask him, he will tell you, I'm concerned about the focus of the team heading into the next season coming off of this national title. How do you get them to buy back in completely for a second straight year? So Michigan was facing some hurdles heading into this year already. Now that we've seen them play a game, some of the maybe things about Michigan maybe that you would have put in the question mark category, I think now have been moved to the concern category, particularly the quarterback situation. Another thing to keep in mind about Texas is they lost a lot from last year too, particularly along the defensive line. They lost a couple of NFL wide receivers. Now they recruit a top 5 almost every single year. They also hit the portal hard at some key positions. But there's a lot of players on this Texas team who were on last year's Texas team. And why does that matter other than the fact that Texas was a really good team last year, winning the Big 12 and making the playoffs? Well, a lot of people on this team went into Bryant-Denny Stadium last year on the road at Alabama and won. So while Michigan is an intimidating place to play and an unfamiliar environment for Texas, a lot of people on this team are going to look at this game very similarly to the way they looked at last year's game on the road at Alabama. And they've got the quarterback back, Quinn Ewers, who played great last year on the road against Alabama. And I expect another really great game from him in this one, too. As a college football fan, I have been looking forward to this game since the day it was announced. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. Just like every other game that I watch that doesn't involve my favorite team, I'm hoping for a great game here. And I do not think that Texas will blow Michigan out. I don't think we're looking at a 21, 24, 27-point win here by Texas. But I thought Texas was the better team heading into the season after watching both teams play in week one, albeit against lesser competition. Texas played Colorado State. Michigan played Fresno State. And I will grant you that Fresno State is tougher competition than Colorado State. There's no question about it. But too many of the potential red flags or question marks that I had about Michigan heading into the season showed up in that game against Fresno State for me to change my mind and pick Michigan. I'm going to have to stick with Texas here. I think Texas gets the win on the road in Ann Arbor. I think it'll be a good game. The line 7.5. I wouldn't bet it over 7. So if you can find it at 7 or 6.5, I can see Texas winning by a touchdown, maybe 10 points. You know, maybe it's a 6 or a 7-point game. Texas gets a late score, wins by 13 or 14, something like that. It could also be a 13 or 14-point a game late, and Michigan scores and cuts it to 5 or 6 or whatever the case. 7.5, not a good betting number if you like Texas in this game, so I probably would stay away from it in that respect, but I do think Texas wins the game on the road in Ann Arbor. Again, shout out to everybody who's over here on the second channel. Shout out to those of you who are just now finding it. Make sure you subscribe. Again, we do live morning shows Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 8 a.m. year-round on this channel, and all of the football content for the next several days will be posted over here as well. I do that once a year during football season to try to help grow this second channel. So I appreciate you watching. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you again soon. Have a good morning.